welcome to Seesar Gear. Today we're going to be talking about two things. We're going to talk about the Walrus audio, lore, and Fable. And these are very similar pedals in some ways, and they're very different in other ways. But I wanted to do a video of them together because they suit themselves to be combined and are additive in that they complement each other quite nicely. They were definitely made with the other one in mind. And the lore pedal is a delay pedal and a reverb pedal, and it features several programs that mix and match reverse reverb trails and a lot of loftier, I'm going to say, shoegazy kind of ambient soundscape sort of programming. And then the Fable is a similar pedal, but it uses granular sampling to create delays and reverbs, and obviously then you have manipulation of grain size and you have manipulation of what you can do with those grains. And between the two of them, you could put them in series and have one affect the other, which I've done many times before. In this video, however, I've got them in parallel because what I wanted to do was allow them to both manipulate the same sound and kind of layer it together, because for me that gives a nice undulation that you can't get if you link one in front of the other, either direction. Meaning the lore first, then the Fable, or the Fable first, then the lore. You get good sounds, don't get me wrong. What I'd love to do if I were loaded with cash is buy two more of them and put a lore and a Fable in series and then have that parallel with a Fable and a lore in series. So I'd have, the pairs in parallel. But I am not that rich just yet. Give me a week or so. And this is what we're going to talk about today. The pedals originally for me were some of the first pedals that I bought that were specifically for exploring ambient soundscapes, because typically I got pedals that were able to create some pretty harsh noise or create some sort of soundscape, but typically through feedback or some sort of modulation that was intended to create these lofty soundscapey type effects. And these are like that. Don't get me wrong. Again, I said don't get me wrong twice already. The pedals are intended to create a wash. They're going to take something pretty like a guitar melody and baste them with the saturation needed to turn it into an ocean of sound. That's great. That's wonderful. However, the beauty of these goes beyond that. It takes that ocean of sound and gives you ways of manipulating it that are much more conducive to a longer soundscape sort of presentation. So if you're working with a few pedals and you are doing like a sound bath kind of show, or you're doing some sort of immersive noise show, these guys can help you create the wall of noise that you need, as well as give you tools to create things within that wall of noise that keep it from being monotonous or boring. And some people want monotonous and boring. I am arguing that you have more options with this sort of a setup. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that I do with it. I still need to explore much further, of course, as I can probably say with every bit of gear I've got. I should spend years with it in a woodshed and come out as a noise master. But instead, what I'm doing is learning some things that work really well, showing you some tricks that you may or may not have thought of, and giving you a taste of the music that I play with this type of gear. And this is no different. So there's a couple of little bits to talk about. First, obviously, I'm going to go through the controls because that's what I like to do. I like to give you all the knobs because that's fun. Knobs, twisting knobs like Pierre. You have a feedback knob, and feedback is just that, feedback on whatever program that you've got. Then you've got a regen button, which is the a number of repeated bits. And then you have modulation and a mix, and that's the same on both of them. The bottom's also the same, but they just have different effects. So you have what's called an X, and the X controls different things per program. But for example, the X may control an amount of randomness. If there's like a random granulation happening with the Fable, the X will control how random it is, and things like that. So each one has a different version of X, but there is an X factor literally in all of the programs. Then you have your time factor, and that's exactly that. What is the delay time, but time between repetitions. Tone is tone. It's high filter, low filter kind of a thing. And then the programs are different. Now I'm not going to go through every program because there's plenty of YouTube videos out there that go through every program and what you can do with them. What I want to point out is the fact that by experimenting and exploring, you can come up with combinations of programs that really juxtapose each other and support each other at the same time. So that's hopefully what I've kind of got laid out today now. There's also these cute flashing little green buttons over here, and you have an engagement button. This is your on-off switch, your bypass, as professional pedal people like to call it. And then the tap button is a momentary button that gives you some undulation within the undulation. And if it's green, if it's flashing green, that means it's going to glissande up. It's going to sweep up. If it's flashing blue, and I'll show you how to switch that, it sweeps down. To switch it, you press both buttons at the same time, and that just switches the direction of the sweep. If you hold down and continue to hold down the button, you get a sustain of that effect. And maybe that's the secret sauce for these guys, because what you're able to do is use that to create little pockets of feedback that work to mix the sounds that you've already got. And obviously the light flashing is the time. If I turn it way down, this is clockwise is down on these, and then anti-clockwise will pick up the speed. Same with the Fable. And I think that's about it. Let's start making some sounds. So I've got a little cigar box guitar here to create my triggers. And the reason I picked this is because it has a nice sharp attack, so you can hear the delay elements, but it's also got capabilities for bowing and glissanding, so you can hear how different instruments might interact with the pedals, because we don't all play oh my gosh, what happened to my tongue? We don't all play cigar box guitars. We play synthesizers, or we play percussion or whatever else. There's a range of attack and delays and sustains, and each one of those has a different effect, or conjures a different effect from these tasty pedals. All right, so here's just a string note. Nothing on it. We haven't got anything engaged. Let's start with the lower. The lower is going to be a reverby kind of sound when I turn up the mix. So I give it a little modulation. And we can change the tone a little bit. A little bit brighter. It's not a huge change at this setting. The time, now the time's going to give us some variation. Again, clockwise is lower, anti-clockwise is high, increase. And then the X button is that modulation factor, I believe, on this setting. Now I have the feedback and the regen kind of down a little bit. Let's give it a little boost on that. So it's starting to lengthen things out a little bit. And I don't know if you can hear this or not, but the attack, if it's a softer attack, you get a certain effect. You get a certain amount of electrical energy actually going to the circuits, creating a certain wave shape. But the harder you play, a higher, sharper attack, gives you more effect triggers. And then let's listen to the momentary button. So down and up, and then if you hold it, it's got a little bit of a sustain there. All right, let's change it to the high, to the rising. It sounds like it goes up an octave. I'm not sure if that's actually the case or just how long I held it, but now let's hold it and keep it there and mess with the time. Okay, now let's switch to the Fable. Give it some mix here. Obviously nothing's happening without the mix being on. That's kind of got a nice jaggedy sound right there. And again, the harder of attack, the sharper of an attack, the more effect comes through the circuit. let's do that again and mess with the sustain button. So there you have some examples of things it can do. My voice, I think, just triggered the that was fun. I was talking and the cigar box guitar picked up my voice and made the Fable talk back to us. All right, so now let's just have a play around and see what we can come up with two, with both of them on, with one source. It's in parallel again, and I'll plug the string, but I'm going to also switch to doing some bowing so you can hear some sustained sound inputs and things like that. See what we can come up with. Pretty fun, pretty fun. So much fun. I'm just gonna let it feed back. Let's see if it does anything if I let it feed back. Wow, yeah. Here's a trick that I find very useful. If you have a trail and you want to either make sure nothing else comes back into the mix, or you just want to truncate it, like you're in the middle of performances, you want a cold stop. If you alter the program, it kills the sound. So, for example, Oh, it's not on. Oops. Let's turn it on first before I try to tell you some of these things. So that'll kill it, sort of. And then if you want to remove any of the effects, obviously you just have to turn the mix down. But if you have the mix, if you have the mix up, the trail will continue. So the thing to do is switch your program one direction or the other, turn the mix down before anything else can generate, and that will end up giving you the cold stop that you want, because the cold stop does not happen with the true bypass. It does bypass it, but the trail is not truncated. Now, I like that, because one of my big issues with lots of reverbs is if you turn it off, it has a cold stop. But if you are at the end of a song and you're just letting the trail do its thing as the end of the piece or something like that, it's better to have something that does not have a cold stop. But it also is good to be able to have the option in case you need or want the cold stop. So that's the way I do it with these. I am absolutely sure that they did not intend for me to switch programs quickly and whip the mix down for a cold stop, but that's what I do. That's my trick. Anyway, all right, I'm going to leave it at that. I really enjoy both of these pedals. I was so pleased when I got them that I literally sat probably for almost 3 hours just creating sounds that had super long trails. Now, I can say the same thing for a couple other reverb pedals that we'll get to. One, the big one being the Mesmerizer, because the Mesmerizer has an insane trail of like 45 minutes or something. So you can really use that one to your advantage if you're doing some sort of Titanic sound bath type of thing. But these guys are more practical in terms of working with gentler or subtler sharp attacks, and they're really well built, they're really well designed. I believe there's a third one coming out. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I think there's a third one that matches these, that'll have some different effects but the same panel of controls. And I don't know anything about that one yet. I just vaguely remember seeing a video about it, and I'll look into that and hopefully get one and have a video about that. But also the other things that they make, the slow, I believe is their the double version of the slow also works well with this. And I don't own one, which is a bad Seesar, but I would get one, and I want to test it with these. That'll be another thing that's on my shopping list. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this. Let me know if you have some of these. Let me know what you do with them. Let me know if you're going to get one, because they're badass and lots of fun. And if you want any more gear discussions to chew on, then please check out SeesarMusic.com/gear. You can also go to my website and hear some of my music or see my compositions, even approach me about playing some of them or joining some of my recordings. And that's it. Thank you so much for now, and I'll see you in the next one. Doosh.